All right, let's jump back into the game. So rook e4 played.
Yeah, rook e4, knight d6, everything is forced. I mean, using the fact that the knight on e7 is vulnerable, rook e2 had to be played. And now black doesn't have this tempo anymore. On the other hand, how do you, maybe some knight b5, knight d4, knight e6, is that a route? Because after knight b5, if you go knight f5, then I'm just in time to go knight d4. But Daniil played the move rook d3. Okay, very natural. You occupy the third rank, stop any
Black's dream is to get his knight to f4 somehow, and I wonder if knight h8, knight g6 could be an idea eyeing both these squares.
Yeah, and also very importantly, you stop any kind of knight e5 tempos. Knight on f7 is quite nice. On the other hand, okay, knight h8 feels, yeah, rook e3, you take control. You take control. I mean, these are the positions that usually nothing really dramatic happens.
But the thing is, Peter, that if now black refuses to trade rooks, for example, a move like rook d2, white could actually improve his position with rook f3 check. And if you go king g7 or king g6, there's knight e7. But you do have the move king e6 still.
Yeah, I have to
Not
move
easy.
to e6. Yeah, I have to move to e6. Yeah, really difficult to say. But this is the only game in progress, yeah? Yeah, this is not the only game. All the other games had been draw, and Anish has won. Very important win for him. It reminds me when yesterday he was interviewed and people asked him, so do you feel any stress? And then Anish said, stress by playing chess? Really? I mean, it also shows that, yeah, how much he loves chess and how much he cares about playing chess and playing good chess. Not necessarily. I mean, of course, if playing good chess and the result comes together, it's wonderful. But okay, I actually love this interview a lot because it shows that, yeah, this is the right attitude, and actually thanks to this attitude you can come back. Because if you feel, I mean, you are stressing yourself about, oh, what will happen, then it's very difficult, because you take it like this, that okay, I played good chess, but it backfired, it was not successful. Let me just keep enjoying what I'm doing, then the result might come to you.
And we also saw that confidence in his tweet today, saying that his comeback has been scheduled for day 2. And rook a3, I was just going to say, Peter, that after rook d7, white did have the option to go rook f3. If you can quickly take a look at that. Because after rook f3, black has to go king to g7. Any other move, white goes into a king pawn endgame by taking on f7.
Wow, I mean, king e6 runs into rook takes f7. Yeah, this is.
And you capture with any piece. There's a knight fork picking up the rook, and you win the king pawn endgame. But after rook f3, black had the option to go king g7, still keeping things under control.
Yeah, but it's kind of scary. And look at this, Daniil down to 45 seconds on the clock. Daniil is back down to 45. Yeah, he goes knight h8. He kind of feels that I have to go knight h8 because that was my whole plan with knight f7. And
go on, Peter.
Yeah, that I have to be consistent. Yeah, otherwise if I put this knight on f7 and I don't know what to do with it, then it might be very dangerous with little time on the clock.
And I really like this rerouting of the knight from d6 to f7 to h8. It looks strange on h8, but once it comes to g6, everything in life makes sense because you want that knight on f4 or h4.
Yeah. Now the question, how do you stop it? Can you stop it?
Can you stop it?
But I mean, okay, for example, rook f3 check runs into, for example, king g7, and I'm gonna go knight g6.
Knight e5 runs into rook e7.
Exactly, yeah. And then if you protect, I go knight g6, and if I change the knights, of course, it's a dead draw. So yeah, not easy for Magnus, and Magnus also down to 1 minute 5 seconds, basically. He really needs to have a good plan, because if black gets knight g6 and start creating his counterplay, then it's very hard to imagine white really keeping those practical winning chances, which usually you can always shuffle around and play a game forever. Knight b8. on the board. I mean, where is this knight heading?
Not
Usually
sure.
you bring the knight from b8 back to c6, now the knight from c6 going to b8. Does it mean that somehow Magnus wants to route it through a6, c5 to e4? Is
But it
that the
looks
route?
very slow. I mean, black can just go play the move rook to b7 now. And then perhaps the rook b7 played, hitting the knight. Maybe he wants to go knight with knight c6 back, you can at least repeat. Because the point was that after he's gone rook a6 check first, king g7, and then maybe knight c6 is the point so that you can try and trade it off with rook a7 next. Let's see that, Peter. Black
This is, this is the idea that he just understood that he cannot stop knight f4, and then he doesn't care. He got the 6th rank, knight c6, you go knight g6, he goes knight d4, and he's trying to go knight f5 himself. And then if you go knight f4 check, you just move your king away, and you are setting with knight f5 check, and then the rook gonna hit the h6 pawn. It's
But isn't rook a7 an option, or do you think that ending why black is easily holding? If instead of knight d4, white just trades the rooks?
just to trade, yeah. Well, I
It
mean,
looks very little pawns though, very less pawns on the board.
yeah, with this fixed structure, it does feel more drawish. I mean, if this knight d4, for example, works nicely, I mean, okay, of course, there is no reason to play knight f4 check. You can go knight h4, but still king g3.
Yeah.
But okay, now the rook on b7 is misplaced, because if any check or any activity with rooks, okay, I can go maybe rook b1. I can create my own agenda. Yeah, so maybe actually Magnus has in mind to change the rooks. Okay, he has both options, and I'm afraid that we got stuck a little bit. Yeah, and we see a lot of action has
We
happened.
see your idea, Peter. He got the knight back on d4 and rook b1 was played.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The line that we discussed is on the board. F4, rook g1 check, king f2, rook g2, king f1. Yeah. Well, still a lot of dynamics in the position, because now black has to decide. I mean, g takes f4 is the move that you basically want to play, because you don't want to allow f5. But on the other hand, if you and he opted for rook d2, knight e6 check. Where do you go with the king?
He wants to set up the knight f3, knight h2 idea.
Yeah, he went king f7.
And I wonder, Peter, if after fg5, can black go knight f3? He's gone for it, so knight h2 is the threat.
But g6 check, wow.
You can't take king g6 because of knight d4. It loses on the spot, so he has to go. What's a good square for the king? You go king e7 now?
Yeah,
King
you go
E7
king e7, that's on the board, and now rook a3.
And
Wow.
now, oh my God, this is looking, Magnus has done it again, I think, Peter. He has just in very Carlsen-esque style made something out of nothing.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay, but this is the point. When you are pawn up and you can keep on putting the pressure on your opponent, and okay, this knight b8, rook a6, this was a wonderful maneuver, which kind of, I think, disbalanced Daniil, because he felt like he's doing everything nicely with this rerouting the knight h8, knight g6, and that should be it. You go down on the clock, and suddenly you encounter some problems. Then you don't want to be tortured by your opponent. You tell yourself, but there is this beautiful perpetual check idea. You go for it, and then Magnus finds the beautiful refutation. Yeah, this is now with the trap knight on h2. It's game over. King g5 runs into g7. I mean, you cannot even put up any fight, and white is threatening to play the move rook a5, cutting off the king, and that's it. Wow.
That is some incredible technique by Magnus.
Yeah, that knight b8 move.
Yeah,
was
and I think,
stunning.
Peter, the point was that he could not. We'll maybe take a look at that moment right after the game finishes. So let's stick with our live position right now, because both players are down to seconds. Magnus in a completely winning position now. King g7 would have run into knight h5 check. So he goes king e5. How is knight h5 anyway? G7 is coming in next, and that's it. Daniil Dubov has had enough. He resigns. Definitely a very disappointing. I think, lost not for the result, Peter, but it looked like Daniil was so close to keeping this together.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here after knight h8, it looked like, wow, beautiful defense. White has, in fact, almost zero chances to continue. And then Magnus finds this incredible knight b8. I mean, if people start analyzing them, maybe they will see, okay, knight b8 was nothing special. But for the practical game, when your opponent kind of almost feels sure that he has the setup, it doesn't matter, I have 20 seconds on the clock, I'm going to go knight g6, I will have my knight implemented on f4, and I will simply be always having enough counterplay no matter how much time I have. And then this knight b8 completely disbalances this whole plan. Completely new scenarios are coming. Now, looking back, Black could have actually played maybe the move rook d6, which stops any kind of rook a6 checks, but it invites rook a6. And looking back, maybe Daniil says that, of course, I should have traded the rooks, and this knight endgame is maybe drawish, but during the game, I believe that he felt like the knight and rook the knight coming to f4 is better than just playing this endgame. So he relied on his feelings. Now that he lost the game, of course, he will tell you that any position was better than that one, what I got in the game. But that's why this knight b8 was so incredibly powerful, because with 30-40 seconds on the clock to decide all this, he went for this natural way, rook b7, and all of a sudden check, king g7, knight c6, knight g6, knight d4, completely new dynamic started, which finally he was not able to handle.
That knight b8 is a very subtle point. And Peter, if you can just go back a few moves when Magnus did play knight b8, I think that after rook d6, Magnus's idea was not to trade, because if that was the point, he perhaps would have gone rook a6 before playing knight b8. And after rook a6 trading, Black can simply even trade off one more pawn with the move king g6 and h5 immediately. This would have definitely, I think, gone the way Daniil wanted to. h5, I think you first go king g6 and then h5, try and trade off one more pawn. But the real point that I think is really interesting, Peter, is that if instead of knight b8, making sure that Black's rook goes to a position that's not ideal, White does play rook a6 first, then Black can simply go rook d6. And you kind of get what you want then with Black. So knight b8, rook b7 was a maneuver to make sure that Black doesn't have this defense of rook d6.